Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. Welcome back. I guess also a welcome back to me. I made a community post about this on my channel, but I apologize for a very long time away from posting. I got appendicitis 3 weeks ago, had an emergency surgery, was able to remove my appendix, a bit of a TMI point at this point, but something that has kept me out of creating videos for a little bit, but I am nearly on fully recovered. I'm in a really good place, and so I felt that I was in a position where, especially with two special elections yesterday in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, I felt it was fitting to return to the channel today and start making videos from here on out, especially since I am feeling a lot better. So, with all of that being said, I already mentioned there were two special elections yesterday, but I am focused on one in specific. From the state of Pennsylvania, in a state Senate district, the 36th to be exact, a state Senate district that Kamala Harris lost by 15 percentage points, Donald Trump won by 15 percentage points in the 2024 election, went to the Democrats. Yes, you heard that correctly. Democrats describing their victory last evening with shock and disbelief. And that was honestly my reaction when I was watching how the Lancaster County was reporting on their election results. I went to the government website. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in this state Senate district because it was all meant to be pretty much a safe GOP hold. It was never meant to be anything more than just a few points of improvement for Democrats. And even then, that would have been noteworthy in the aspect of the fact the Democrats have been consistently outperforming in special election after special election. Even Fox News reporting after last evening, the Democrats have won 5 straight special elections this year alone. And that matters for Democrats as they look ahead to 2026 and beyond. Why? And I will admit, special elections are not an indicator of everything, but they certainly do provide a snapshot in time as to how the American public interacts with members of the Democratic and Republican parties. And as of right now, what happened last night made a difference and helped ultimately the Democratic Party in the state Senate composition in Pennsylvania. Allow me to take you a few steps further. What we've seen in the past 3 weeks since I've been creating videos, Donald Trump's honeymoon period has entirely ended. Donald Trump was in a position where for almost the entire 2 months of Donald Trump's beginning of the presidency, we saw that his approval rating was in the net positive, unlike his first term where after just 2 short weeks, he was underwater in terms of net approval. It took until around early March for Donald Trump to go from a point where he was approved of nationwide to a point where he was more disapproved of than approved of. Today, right now, roughly, nearly at least, a majority of Americans disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing, roughly 2 points ahead of where the approval rating is. All to say, we are no longer in that honeymoon period, but noted that Donald Trump is at a higher level of approval than at most points in his presidency in his first term. In fact, for 99% of the time, this is right, 99% of the time, Donald Trump's approval rating was not this high. So he's in a better position. So what we should expect is that electorally, Democrats should not be having these shock and disbelief moments where they are able to win. But I do think that there is an untapped energy here by the mainstream Democrats, which is why Democrats will talk about this in a video tomorrow. I know I'm a bit behind here, but there's a reason why there are a lot of Democrats out there who feel disaffected with the national party apparatus because they look at people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and feel as if they are not doing enough for the Democratic Party to push back against Donald Trump. Consequently, there seems to be a disconnect in terms of what the messaging was in 2017 through 2021 in opposition to Trump nationwide that largely led the masses amount of the nation to say, I may vote for Donald Trump, but I do not like the job he is doing. And also convince a huge chunk of the national population to say, I'm writing off Trump for a second term in 2020, which is how Joe Biden won in the future. And so I think that's where you're starting to see Donald Trump hold on because there's a huge reason Democrats say Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and Democrats at large aren't doing enough to push against Trump because they saw what a resist lib type of pushback against Trump did in 2017 through 2021, where there was this moral victory the Democrats had with Hillary Clinton winning the national popular vote, with Democrats being in the position where they could say, you know, we won this election based on our standard on the national popular vote side. Donald Trump might have won the Electoral College, but we still have the nation on our side. I think Democrats on the congressional level and especially within the Beltway consultant class, felt very defeated after the 2024 election, as if there was no parts of the nation that looked for any type of holding Donald Trump accountable, that 8 years of an attack against him only resulted in an even bigger victory. I mean, you can admit that Donald Trump won the 2024 election, but also recognize that there are moments in which the Donald Trump administration, the second one, makes major missteps, and that Democrats really twisting the knife on that can do a huge benefit to their party and huge benefit to, how they are viewed by their own constituency, by their base, but also by the national public, and also how Donald Trump is viewed. And so since we're moving past that, I think that can explain why when Democrats organize and actually have an opportunity to flip a district that was seemingly unflippable 3 months ago, a state Senate district like the one we see in Pennsylvania, where Democrats mark their 5th consecutive win of this year in special elections, the victory here is marked by the fact that Democrats had an opportunity, and on the local level, they tapped into it, they organized, and they turned out their voters. What does this remind me of? You might ask, or you may not ask, but I'm going to tell you what it reminds me of. 2009, 2017, arguably even 2013. The initial stages of pushbacks against incumbent presidents. In 2009, it was the Tea Party movement forming to oppose the establishment Republican Party as well as the Obama presidency, and we saw how well they did in 2010, the most pickups we've seen for a political party in decades. In 2010, 63 seats in the House of Representatives. Democrats had their biggest majority of the 21st century 2 years later. Republicans expand to a very high point, the largest they have had in their congressional majority since 94. Massive, massive victory for Republicans in 2010. But we saw it in 2009. We saw it in special elections like these. And I bring up 2017 to point out that in 2017, what did we see? A very similar story. It was the Georgia 6th District election, the coinciding one in South Carolina that received no national attention. Just as close. It was Ron Estes in Kansas, right? It was all these elections across the board. Montana, even, where Democrats really did well in races they never should have been able to do well in the first place. It was James Thompson against Ron Estes, a 6-point race, 8-point race, what was in the past a 30-point race. Montana at large, what was a double-digit race, ended up being 5 points. What happened in South Carolina's 5th, right, a 4-point race in what used to be a 30-point race. And in Georgia's 6th, John Ossoff, who lost this race, went on to be a senator 3 years later, narrowed up a race that we saw Tom Price used to hold by massive, massive amounts. They were the early indicators of what ended up being massive rejections of an incumbent president. And although I think Donald Trump is certainly outperforming expectations when it comes down to national approval, the fact still remains he is more unpopular than he is popular. And that makes a difference in special elections like these. If Donald Trump was holding the approval rating that he held on day one of his second administration, a net 12-point difference between approve and disapprove, Democrats would not have won this Senate race. If Donald Trump had held the approval rating he held at the beginning of this month with a net approval of 1.2% in comparison to being down 1.2% or around there, Democrats would not have won this Senate election. Why? Because the race was so exceptionally close that on the margins, the way that voters engaged in this race largely was an effort to organize against the GOP and organize not only against the GOP, but for James Malone, the Democrat in this state Senate race. It was an opportunity for Democrats to take a Trump plus 15 district, and they did. And so when I look, too, at the coinciding state House election, on a smaller scale, 10,000 votes. Let's not treat it as if it's as big as a state Senate district. But it also helps break the tie, give Democrats the advantage in the Pennsylvania State Senate, but not to mention Kamala Harris won this district by significantly less than the Democrat in this special election. Of those who are fired up and ready to vote, as Barack Obama would say, they are Democrats. They are the engaged party that is looking at this and saying, we have very minor ways to push back against the incumbent president, but we are going to take it. And even if national Democrats aren't giving the Democratic Party base what they would like to see, because I can tell you this now, you go to any average Democrat, they will be disaffected with the national party in a way they were not before. because I think the response to Trump has been very different than it was before in an effort to understand and engage with the American populace, which on one end, I absolutely understand why you need to say, let's take a step back. Let's analyze the 2024 election and realize what we went wrong. Where were we wrong on social issues? Where were we wrong on economic issues? Where were we wrong when it came down to the middle of the road voter that went from Trump to Biden to back to Trump, right? I completely understand that. But I do think there is a point here now where Democrats are starting to push back against their own party. Again, not the point of this video. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Bear with me. We will talk about it tomorrow. I promise you. But what we're talking about today is when Democrats can organize right. When Democrats can turn out their base and take districts and take elections that would have been written off and arguably should have been in a position where maybe if Kamala Harris was president, you're not going to win a Trump plus 15 district. But she's not president. And so now you need to throw all of these back into the arena. Because what I think about is 2010 in a way that I think many of us just simply don't. And I think about that because of what Republicans were able to do in the races that would have been deemed left, right, and center unwinnable. Let's take a case study, for example. Let's take Arkansas, where in some cases, the districts were so in love with their incumbent Democrat. Republicans refused to run a candidate. Do you know how unheard of that is? Refusing to run a candidate. You can't find a single person in a congressional district of 1 million people who would dare oppose the Democrat in Arkansas. Think about that today. A completely red delegation, but in 2008, no, it was not. But here's what the delegation looked like 2 years later. We saw a district, Arkansas's first, where the Democrat ran unopposed. Not even a Green Party candidate. Not even someone like Jill Stein said, let me run. In Arkansas's second, the Green Party run. In Arkansas's fourth, the Green Party ran. 2 years later, the second district, and take a look at the people running. Barry ended up not running, and neither did the Democrat here. Either way, though, the districts go from Democrats unopposed to Republican lockdowns. 8-point margin, 19.6% margin. And when you're talking about running an incumbent, right? When you're talking about running someone in this district here, Ross won by 72.3, and this is just Arkansas, right? You can see the national shift from blue to red. I don't have to really show you. You can see it visually. I guess I am showing you. I don't have to tell you, right? 257 to 193. Republicans go from 178 to 242. Massive, massive change. And honestly, this was really bad for the Democratic Party. Arguably, 2016 to 2018 was bad. Still, not as bad as 2010, don't get me wrong, but a switch up of 40 seats in the House of Representatives. If Democrats are able to contest districts, whether on the state Senate level, the state House level, or the congressional level, that were going to Donald Trump by 15 points, it throws so many districts on the radar. On our national composition map, the reason why the implications here are so great are that Democrats are down the House majority by 3 seats. If Democrats win 3 more seats than Republicans, in the next election, they flip 3 seats. Democrats have the majority. But I can tell you this now. Democrats are going to get more than 3 seats, and they are going to win back the House of Representatives. In the same way I told you, the day after Biden won the election in 2020, November 8th, 2020, I have a video up. And around those time, and consistently, I said Republicans will win House control in 2022. And they did. Because history dictates all. Republicans will lose House control. But what it does here isn't just says Republicans, okay, you might lose House control. They're going to lose it. Not just by a little bit, but by a lot, in the same way they did in 2018. And I allow you to take a look at what these special elections often foretell. They may not predict presidential elections because that's an all-in. Everyone's engaged. You're seeing people like Joe Rogan endorse national candidates, and celebrities like Beyonce speak out for the Democrats. And you're seeing a very engaged electorate. Right? A high turnout election like 2024 was the second highest we've seen in the 21st century. The second highest we have seen in the 21st century. Not Obama won, not Trump won. The second highest we've seen in the 21st century. And the second highest we have seen since the year 1952. Halfway through, right? Point being, though, this time around, when you talk about engaged voters and you talk about Trump plus 15 districts being on the map, what does that mean? Suddenly, Democrats are automatic pickups in the 1.6 districts and the 1-point districts and the 1.3 districts. And in some cases, districts like this that were 12.8% are back on the menu for Democrats. They look at races that were deemed unwinnable. Michigan Democrats could win back that delegation. Michigan's 7th district, a 3.7% victory for Republicans. Michigan's 4th, Michigan's 10th. These races become winnable. The DCCC could theoretically use these results and say, let's contest everywhere. And I can tell you now, in about 2 weeks, we'll probably see a red to blue press memo coming from the DCCC announcing that they are targeting way more districts than we previously thought were winnable for Democrats. The shock and disbelief from Democrats isn't going to end in Pennsylvania's state Senate race. I remember covering the Connor Lamb special election live. If you want to go back and see what I sounded like when I was merely a freshman in high school, I live streamed this Senate race in Pennsylvania's 18th district. I'm sort of aging myself here. I'm a senior in college now, if you didn't know. Looking at this 18th district, what did it tell us? That in just 6 months, Democrats were, or a little bit more than 6 months. I don't know if I'm not studying math, I can tell you that. But that Democrats were going to eventually win House control. That they were winning a district Trump had won by 20 points, and even if it was by a 0.4% margin, it was the moral victory after moral victory in Kansas's 4th district and in Georgia's 6th district that led to an eventual victory. A flip in a Trump plus 20 district. And what did Democrats do? They contested states that were previously unwinnable, deemed unwinnable in every aspect. Oklahoma's 5th, Russell won by 20 points. What happened 2 years later? The Democrat won by 1.4. I'm telling you this because we've seen it happen recently. We saw it happen under the last Republican president, which, letting you in on a secret, was Donald Trump. And so when I look at results like these, I'm reminded of what was for Democrats back then. What seemed like it might have been out of reach because Trump was more popular and is more popular than he had been for a very long time. But of the voting population, of the engaged group, approval rating's lower. In the swing districts, it's lower than it is nationally. And what that means is, when it comes down to fighting on a competitive edge, Democrats almost will always have it. In the same way they did in 17, in the same way they did in 18, in the same way they did in 19. And Democrats should hope that they can continue that through 2028 to win that next election. But in the immediate, in what we are seeing in special election after special election after special election, you don't have me to tell you, but Fox News can tell you too, because they're raising the alarm bells for all the Republicans too. Looking at it, the Democratic Party won massively last night in a way that was not expected, but I certainly do not think this will be the last victory for Democrats in the special election world. We have a number coming up on Tuesday, a special Supreme Court election in Wisconsin to keep an eye out for, so a lot to think about, a lot to talk about, and it'll be very, very interesting to watch, and I hope you, stay along for the ride. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2026, Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.